the lead executive board member of MMSN, where Dr. Kamal Thapa sir is the president of MMSN, and we have Santosh Pania sir as the vice president, Subhash Thwaites sir as the treasurer, Suman Acharya as the secretary, Rajesh Sharma as the joint secretary, Subarna Adhikari, Prasanna Karki, Shreyasi Kasi, Sanjeev Khare, Akash Sepali, and Ms. Ashika Aryal as the member of MMSN. Let's start the session with the brief introduction of Dr. Buddha sir, who is the founder of we also have who is the assistant professor at the Department of Emergency Medicine at the Thwaites, and she is also the consultant and clinical lead at Oxford University Clinical Research Unit at Nepal. And we also have Thwaites, who is from University of Oxford, and she is the associate professor at Oxford, and she also has the experience of volunteer doctor for HRA in Malang in 2024. And we will also have David Clifton, who will be joining us soon, and he is the professor from University of Oxford, and he also has the experience of volunteer doctor for HRA in Malang in 2024. And we also have James as well as Oxford University Clinical Research Unit at Basnyat, and he has been working in the field of AI-driven diagnostic tools. And here we have Professor David Clifton from University of Oxford and the Royal Academy of Engineering Chairperson of Clinical Machine Learning at the University of Oxford, and he will be sharing his insights on AI in medicine. And I would like to request Professor David Clifton to be in the stage to formally start the session.
Very many thanks to James. James has just illustrated the point that an engineer is never early or never late. He arrives exactly on time. Okay, so I'm going to start off by showing you a video of a project that we've been doing. Fantastic facilities that we have here to be able to do some of the research work that we're doing in AI, but in a current population. So I'm going to kick off this video. Little bits of it are in Vietnamese, and so we're going to our resident Vietnam expert, as you heard, Associate Professor Thwaites, who's going to speak through the Vietnamese bits. Thank you, Louise. Okay, let's see.
The latest data shows that 30 to 40% of patients with tetanus and low middle income countries die from the disease. It's a big problem in recognizing patients with severe disease early and even in places like hospitals for tropical diseases where the mortality rate is much, much lower in patients with 2 or 3 weeks missing out in terms of pain. And that puts a huge burden on the staff, the resources, and of course families and the patients themselves. Oxford AI systems uses data from wearable monitoring devices, real without the same
từ mức độ 1, 2, 3, 4 và có triệu chứng lâm sàng từ nhẹ cho tới nặng. Và nếu như bạn
the ABLET score that we use to score severe tetanus, depending, some of you who came to my tetanus talk last year will know this already, but in the more severe degrees of ABLET score, the patient has problems breathing and may need to be ventilated. And the severest level is ABLET 4, where the patient has autonomic instability and disturbance. And it's very important to know early which patients, as they transit through these phases, what is happening to them, so we can act in a timely manner to improve patient outcomes. And saying that it's important to try and monitor these patients so we can detect these changes early. Look for the signs that a patient is deteriorating. And so early signs are changes in the heart rate and blood pressure that we watch on the monitor. But this needs a lot of equipment and it needs a lot of staff to be able to do this.
They may not have enough time or equipment to monitor patients with tetanus very closely. And the AI helps them by alerting them very early to signs that a patient might be deteriorating. And that means that they can intervene and plan treatments much earlier and do these in a much more controlled manner.
Hệ thống AI của chúng tôi theo dõi các chỉ số sinh hiệu của bệnh nhân như là nhịp tim và động
So
mạch.
this is a technology that we have developed. And this is a wearable pulse oximeter, and this is the technology we're going to be using in our new study in this hospital that connects via Bluetooth to a mobile phone or tablet. And we can see the vital signs here, but we also connect that to a computer, and that's where we run the AI. And the AI looks at the data coming from the oximeter and detects early, we hope, patients who are changing severity of tetanus. It then connects to a warning that comes to a mobile phone of the doctor or nurse, and they can go and check the patient.
Into the ICU and testing it in patients in real life. Our AI is also helpful in settings where staff are not so familiar with tetanus. And that's because it's incredibly powerful in that it analyses the whole waveform signal rather than just normal numbers. It can see things that may not be obvious at a first glance looking at basic data.
This AI model was trained on hundreds of hours of wearable data collected through the partnership between OCRU and the Hospital for Tropical Diseases. It's actually one of the largest and most detailed wearable device data sets in the world right now, so that's certainly contributed to the reliability and performance of our model. So as of right now, this AI system is run locally on a laptop, so no data is transferred to any external server. Additionally, all of the data collected for this project is under a research protocol and IRB approved by both OCRU and the Hospital for Tropical Diseases. All of the data has also been fully anonymized to protect the identity of the patients. I truly believe that patients have a right to privacy and a right for their data to be kept safe and secure, and that the individual rights of patients should be prioritized over technological innovations.
Using sensor data in controlled lab settings is quite straightforward, but applying this technology to real patients in real clinical environments is an entirely different level of complexity, and that's why nobody else has been able to do this. The long-standing collaboration that we have between Oxford University, the Clinical Research Unit in HUN City, and the Hospital for Tropical Diseases has been the key part, building trusts between doctors, scientists, engineers, and researchers to bring this project to life.
Thực sự thì việc phát hiện mô hình này là khó và không đơn giản.
She's saying, I don't want to translate this because she's actually saying it's really difficult to do this amount of developing technology. It's not as easy as it looks, but she's learned a lot during the process.
Changes in the patient's health before a clinician normally would. But in the future, we envision this model functioning as a true forecasting system, predicting changes in the patient's health days in advance.
Beyond tetanus, this technology can be adapted for other diseases. We're already looking at it in pneumonia and sepsis, which affect millions of people throughout the world. So yes, overall, I think it can really impact healthcare positively in the future.
Even better than subtitles, we have real-time translation. Thank you very much. Okay, let's switch back. And one of the people you just saw introduced, Professor Thwaites, from the airport. Thank you for coming back. we'll be looking inside the machine to show you some of the ways that AI can help medical practice, and some of the new kinds of capabilities that AI systems can now provide for us. I've just skipped over a very quick drawing of when you go to academic conferences, sometimes the talks they go on too long, so I end up sketching. This is something we don't want to do. We don't want to replace human doctors with AI, but we want to augment them. There are capabilities that an AI system is actually very good at that humans are not so good at. And you can imagine what those are. Some of those that we will be touching on in the next few minutes. So the range of projects that AI can be used for is pretty great. I won't go through all of these, but this is a whole range of activities that AI systems are being used in practice to help improve patient care, or help improve the way that, for example, medicines are created. And as of today, we've added a new little bit here for Nepal. So we're very excited to be able to do this new project in this beautiful city, and to do some of the things that you saw in the video. The emphasis here, I believe, is going to be on pneumonia and other types of infection, sepsis infections, but the general approach will be really similar. Okay, so I'm going to, just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip on to show you, when I say AI, I'm going to very quickly kind of show you the kinds of data that I deal with. And whenever you read about AI online or in a news article or whatever it might be, it's often about medical images. And AI is really good at solving medical imaging problems, being able to spot abnormalities in a lung scan, or being able to look at a cardiac ultrasound and being able to interpret what's going on and help a clinician. But I do none of that at all. So I do things which are not images. I'd like to give you an idea of what it is the kind of data that we use, and we'll be using here in Nepal as well. So very often the kind of data that I care about are the data that change through time, the data that you can track, and importantly, when things are changing through time, you can make predictions about where they're going. So we can make predictions about people's vital signs and so on, and we can also use these AI models to make predictions, therefore, about the health of a patient, or the course of a disease, or even which medicines should be given to a patient. And some of the studies that we've done include, for example, trying to work out from a blood sample which medicine a tuberculosis patient should be given, and which ones a tuberculosis patient might be resistant to. So in terms of these kind of data, we just saw some examples, didn't we, in the video? We saw we just had a look around in the teaching hospital here. We went through the various parts of the emergency department, and particularly in the red zone, we saw a lot of things that look like this. So we're seeing these waveforms, these time-varying signals, that are biosignals that are collected from patients, and you as medical students and experts in medicine will know these far better than me. I'm a lunch here. But we're very interested in dealing both with the shapes of these time-varying waveforms, but also the numerics, the numbers. And when you're trained in medicine, you're trained to look for certain characteristics of these data. But AI is not told to look for those. What AI is told to do is we give it examples. For example, patients with severe tetanus and patients with mild tetanus. And then we ask it, what are the shapes and the characteristics in these data that are different between those two? And the reason we do that is because then, of course, when a patient comes in, we compare the measured signals from the new patient to our understanding of those that came from the severe or the mild tetanus patient. And so the kind of things that the AI system will learn are often very different to the things that you will be taught in med school. And very famously, AI is now very good at playing Go, the Chinese and Japanese and Korean game Go, and also, of course, playing chess. And fascinatingly, human grandmasters, when they play against AI systems, they say that the AI systems play alien chess. They're playing moves that no human has ever really considered. They're just completely different styles of playing, because that's what the AIs learn. The AIs pick that up as patterns in the data that it should deploy at those particular times. And it's the same kind of thing here. We're going to learn things that are different to, perhaps, to those things that humans have been learning. So that's why it's a nice complement. It's a discovery exercise. Are there things in these data sets that allow us to predict serious monkeypox or mild monkeypox, whatever it might be? Mpox, I should say now. Other types of data that we care a lot about are things like the blood tests, so the contents of the blood. Sometimes we care about genomic data, and there are some low-cost methods of getting components of these data as well. We also really care about, of course, if you're wanting to make predictions about patients, it helps a lot if you know what kind of drugs they're on, because that changes the physiology clearly. And it also helps to know what kind of diseases the patient may already have been diagnosed with. So if we know a patient's got diabetes, then we know to handle their patient data differently than if they've got cardiovascular disease or other things like that. And one of the really helpful parts, particularly that we found in Vietnam, in the NHS back at home, the National Health Service, and we're going to be doing the same here in Nepal, is using wearable sensors. So they're relatively low cost. The things I showed you before and we saw in the videos, you know, a big monitor, a vital signs monitor can be pretty expensive. These things are much, much cheaper, but they're not medical devices. They're just data acquisition systems. But they still give you loads of data that we can use for AI. And here is an example of the thing that you just saw being used with the interface developed from the team as OCRU. And we partnered with a Vietnamese provider of healthcare systems, iParamed. And this is an example of a sort of a nursing station display. So the patient data are being broadcast from the wearable devices that you just saw in the video, so that you can keep an eye on a ward full of patients. Increasingly, we're getting huge amounts of text as well. And that can mean scanned versions of handwritten paper forms, because AI is pretty good at reading those now. But ultimately, it would be things that humans have typed into electronic health records. So perhaps when a patient consultation is happening, then those text resources are being accumulated. So let me give you some examples, and let me show you, perhaps by way of example, exactly why it is that I think AI has got a role to play in helping clinicians in an interesting and new way. So the old way of developing AI systems, and I've been in AI for 20 years, so I've done a lot of the old systems. The old way of collecting it, of building these things, was as I just described. So you collect patient data, let's say, from severe tetanus patients. You collect patient data yourself from mild tetanus patients, and then you build a machine that can separate the two types of patients based on the recorded data. So that's the way that data analysis has proceeded for a very long time. And medical statistics would handle the problem in a similar way. But can you think, what is the disadvantage of taking that approach? There is an obvious disadvantage. What do you think? Any takers? You're not allowed to answer, James. You've got to collect the data yourself. So the AI system is only as good as many sepsis patients or tetanus patients as you can chase down and record data from. So that's a limiting step, because putting devices on patients and so on, they don't want to wear them, you have to chase them, etc. It's a little bit difficult. What I'm showing you here is a new kind of AI, so we'll be very familiar, I think, with things like ChatGPT, with things more recently like DeepSeek, if you've had played with these open source models, downloading these apps and using them for free. We're very used to these AI systems that have been trained already. So they've been pre-trained. And you probably know from the press that the way these things are trained is you collect tons and tons of, for example, text data. You just use every bit of text data that you can get your hands on. Books, newspapers, online news articles, movie reviews, whatever it is. And you train a machine, And the machine, the way it works, is a bit like predictive texting on your phone. It's trying to predict the next word every time in a given sentence. And it does that in the pre-training stage over its enormous collection of data. I think it's very good at being able to predict the next word under any circumstances. And so when you download DeepSeek or download ChatGPT or use Google Gemini, whatever it is, and you ask it a question, that's basically what it's doing. It's giving you the most likely next word, next word, next word, and it's producing sentences of the most likely response to the sentences that you gave it. A very clever version of predictive texting. And we can do very, very similar things with the kind of data that I've just showed you. Now, what this slide is showing us is we've got lots of different kinds of data in medicine, and you will know these better than I do. We've got ECGs, so 12-lead ECGs. We've got continuous data from monitors that we just saw, wearables we've talked about, and then reports, perhaps from ECGs, perhaps from radiology scans, whatever it might be. And if you wanted to build a model in the original way that I talked to you, if I were doing this work 5-10 years ago, we would be doing as described, collect some of these data for severe TENS patients and so on. And so every single time you change the input data, you're going to need a new model. You have to retrain it and do everything from scratch. And it's only as good as the data you collect. Also, now let's think about the outputs of the machine. Every time you want the machine to do something else in the original scheme, you'd have to retrain it, you'd have to build a new machine. So if I wanted to build a machine that predicted the type of CVD that somebody has got, like left ventricular bundle block or atrial fibrillation or whatever it might be, I'd have to train a new machine every time. And I'd have to collect atrial fibrillation data from a bunch of people, etc., etc. And if I wanted to estimate vital signs, if I wanted to try and determine the age of the patient or the sex of the patient, whatever it might be from their data, or if I wanted to predict if they're going to live or die, most likely in intensive care, whatever it might be, each one of those means doing the whole thing again from scratch. So the reason I'm showing you these is because just as the way that ChatGPT works, we can do all of this pre-trainings. So we can collect huge examples of representative data without yet saying what we want to do with it. So when OpenAI builds ChatGPT, they are not setting it tasks. They are just ensuring that it can make reasonable predictions about human text. And so that's what we do here. We collect these huge quantities of data, and in exactly the same way, we make it produce reasonable predictions about what the next bit of ECG is going to be like, or what the next bit of wearable sensing data will look like, and so on. So we can do all of this now within a single model, and in the jargon, these are often called large language models, for obvious reasons, but these are not applied to language. Here the language, so to speak, are time-varying sequences of the biosignals that we looked at before. So these are called foundation models, because we're building a foundation. The model is pre-trained on a foundation of huge amounts of biosignals, and then later we deploy that model, maybe in a mobile phone or whatever, and then the user decides what they want to do with it. And in the jargon, it's called downstream tasks. So downstream, down the river, later on, after the pre-training, the user is choosing what it is that they're going to do. Is it, I'm going to use it for predicting the next vital sign? Or is it, I'm going to try and predict whether the patient lives or dies? So let me give you a very, very high-level overview of the way this kind of system works for the data I've just shown you. We've collected huge amounts of these data so far. ICU data, home data, wearables data. You've seen this thing here, the photoplethysmogram. Brilliant word game word. Nice long score in Scrabble if you play that word game, photoplethysmogram. ECGs, you will know, text reports and so on. And then we build the machine where each one of these different things, another bit of jargon, we refer to this as a multimodal data set. So what it isn't It's a data set that's trained on, for example, cardiac ultrasounds. It says heart disease yes, heart disease no. Multimodal means it's taking all of these different kinds of data, these different modes of data, and then it's going to be able to do the downstream tasks that we described. And those are fundamental terms in AI. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll just show you examples of the kinds of things that we pour into the soup when we're building these things in terms of pre-training. We have huge amounts, for example, of ECGs, very, very large data sets of labelled ECGs from our collaborators, from the NHS and other places. And just showing you that these are extremely large data sets full of these kind of medical data that are described. And AI people really love the next kind of diagram. I'm not going to talk you through this for obvious reasons, but when we get together, we show each other these diagrams and we get very hot and sweaty and excited. I just show it to you so that you can peek under the bonnet and just kind of see in a very hand-wavy way what it is that we're doing. We're passing in ECGs, we're passing in the data from wearable sensors, we're passing in text, and then we turn those into a language. We tokenize it, we turn it into a sequence of tokens. And it's the sequences that the machine is then using to be able to make the predictions that we described. Okay, so now you're all AI experts, and we can build these things together, and let's see how they work. Data scientists also get very hot and sweaty about the following kind of pictures. I'd like to show you these two. So we love graphs, and they're not very exciting, are they, when you look at graphs? But what these are, the message that these conveys is extraordinarily exciting, I put it to you. So hear me out. So what we're doing here, let me just see if I can unpack this rather unpleasant slide. What I'm showing you, let's take this one for example. This is classifying cardiovascular disease on a pre-trained model that has never seen the patient data before that we're going to test it on. It's completely unseen. It's just seen loads of ECGs in the past. And if you take the old-fashioned approach, if you very carefully collect lots of atrial fibrillation data, lots of left ventricular bundle block, blah, 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 etc., collecting very carefully all these different types of cardiac abnormalities, and trained machines in the old-fashioned way to do that, purpose-built machines, then you kind of get a certain level of performance, which is pretty good. And these last three bars are the AI approaches that I just described, a little bit like the ChatGPT for medical signals. They've never been trained on the kind of data that you just collected. And yet, what do you see? You see what I'm showing you here is that these pink bars at the end, these are the results obtained from our AI systems of this new kind. And they outperform someone clever doing very careful data analysis by building purpose-built special models. So that's why I get very excited about these very unexciting looking pictures, because it means that we can turn up to quite new problems that the model has never seen before and perform pretty well, actually, and often outperforming. As if we've done that, if we did the clinical trial ourselves, we did the data collection ourselves, we can outperform those methods using the pre-trained systems. It's very exciting. I'll just show you some examples of other things we can do. We can predict what's, based on the data that we're getting, we can predict what the arterial blood pressure waveform and other things are going to look like. Because we're, just like, as I was mentioning, we're predicting the next word in the sequence. Not only can we predict if someone's got atrial fibrillation, yes or no, but we can predict what the arterial waveform should be looking like, even though we're not collecting it. And then we can compare it to the ground truth, so that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing our predictions of arterial blood pressure, where we haven't shown the model this particular patient's arterial blood pressure. It's very exciting. I'll skip over a few results. Let me show you another example. I think this one's pretty good as well. Here's a good old-fashioned ECG, 12 lead. You all know these better than me. I can read a little bit of these. You can probably read a lot of them. But you can ask qualitative, even quantitative questions. So you can have a conversation with these systems and it will go to the ECG image and determine whether these are normal ECGs or not. I can show you some results that show that this performs, again, as well as or better than if you trained a machine specifically to read those and you collected loads of normal ones and abnormal ones. It's really very exciting. And so these are big integrated machines that have got a couple of advantages. As I've mentioned already, we're building these things in advance. So we can, for example, take advantage of a huge amount of data that Oxford has collected and then bring it to Ho Chi Minh City, to bring it to Kathmandu and see how it works. We can use data from Kathmandu, from Ho Chi Minh City to improve its performance even further. But we get a long way towards where we need to be without having seen a lot of those data already. That's the magic of pre-training. Also, it's got these great conversational style interfaces, as shown here. This is not great conversation, but I'll show you some later which are a bit more conversation. And also, it can explain itself too. And so, I find that part that medics like a lot, because computer says yes, computer says no. It's quite hard for a clinician to get behind. But computer says atrial fibrillation and here is why, that seems a bit more interesting. And you can test that against your own understanding, and then you can choose to accept or reject what the machine is saying in a more interesting way. Let me show you some other examples of things that AI can do for us, just while we're on the subject. And again, you have to forgive these very AI-style diagrams. This is typically the way we speak to each other. What this is saying is I've got a big language model here, and I'm going to present it with a large amount of text about a new patient. This particular machine has seen loads and loads of drug information. So it's scoured the internet for publicly available drug information from the NHS, from drugs.com, and it's read every abstract in PubMed, which is hundreds of millions of articles. And we built a model. We built a large language model to synthesize and use all those data. And the purpose of this thing is to be able to help medics prescribe drugs. So it can, for example, say which drug is relevant, how much you should be given. More excitingly, it can then say if a patient's likely to have an adverse reaction to the drug, pretty helpful. If the patient's going to have a drug-drug interaction, they're on some drugs, could the new drug be expected to interact nastily with some of the things it's on? And these are known and nasty problems in medicine that cause a lot of patient distress. I'm going to show you very quickly one magic part of this particular system. It's called drug GPT, so it's a GPT system that recommends drugs. And this particular one, remember I said it's read every article in PubMed. Humans can probably read, I don't know, like a couple of hundred a week if you're lucky, even if you can remember them. This thing's read hundreds of millions. And it's built a knowledge graph. It's a really simple knowledge graph. It just relates conditions to drugs and also to treatments, not shown here. So it's saying, it knows, for example, that cancer drugs are used to treat cancer and you don't often use aspirin to treat cancer and things like that. So it's a very simple graph, but it's absolutely enormous because it contains every single disease, ICD-10 code, every single medicine, and so on. And the result of doing this is a really quite exciting output. So I'm going to talk you through this spider plot on the right-hand side. Ignore this bit. So this, again, another way that AI people like to talk to each other. A spider plot shows lots of different things that your model might want to do. Okay. And then you compare, so our one here is drug GPT. So this is how well it's doing at this task. So adverse drug events. Can it predict that the patient's going to have a nasty reaction to a drug? And we're at about 82%, I think we are. It's pretty accurate, it's not bad. Whereas generic large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so forth, I don't think we've got Gemini in here actually, are really, really very bad at that. So best case, you're getting about 50% accuracy, being able to predict drug events. You're getting about 60% accuracy from ChatGPT about trying to identify drug-drug interactions. And the reason I show you this is because we took this to some friends in primary care who run the UK, for example, computer systems for primary care called EMIS. And they said, actually, our clinicians tend to use ChatGPT to try and get this information. So they're sitting with a patient, they're doing a bit of Googling to try and find out what's appropriate for the patient, which they do. And they are, this computer company is reporting to us that their clinicians, primary care doctors in the NHS, are using ChatGPT to try and identify drug-drug interactions. We've shown it's only 60% accurate. You don't want to be doing that. Whereas if you do it sensibly using the kind of medical knowledge that I've described, we can get nearly 100% of being able to predict these things. So there are really exciting tasks that we can set these machines to be able to help humans. We're not ever going to say, get the machine to recommend the drugs to the human. But what we are going to do is use this as an opportunity to flag to a clinician, here's what the machine is suggesting for your patient. Would you like to take that into consideration when you, the doctor, make the final decision? And that goes back to my first slide. We don't want to replace the human. The human will always be the last part of the decision-making process. The patient wants to talk to a human. But humans make mistakes. Primary care GP doctors in the UK are not trained oncologists, but they might have to handle patients who are on very, very expensive oncology treatments. Now, oncology treatments are nasty, chemotherapy treatments are serious, and a lot of primary care doctors are not very well trained in those things. So they could benefit from a machine that's able to help identify how to handle these. This one has been reported in the UK press, and it's doing pretty well. We're in the process at the moment of scaling it up for use in primary care. And I'm going to show you, just in the last 5 minutes, I want to show you one last new kind of AI that we've developed recently. Okay, so just to quickly talk you through just this example that I'm showing you on this page. So what we're going to use now is a large language model for predicting the risk of a patient. So we have access to a patient's electronic health record, so it's their computer record, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we know about the patient. Great. We're going to build a machine, ours is called Risk Agent, because it's going to predict risk. And what it's going to do is predict risk of gazillions, well, 480, different conditions all at once. Okay, so we're going to, and the way this works is that we'd like this to work. It's going to sit in the background. So whenever a patient is being treated in primary care or in hospitals, then the data, they're being treated for whatever conditions they've got. Might be, let's say grandmother comes in to have diabetes treated, she's talking to a doctor about diabetes, but her data are being collected and stored. And in the background, in parallel, we're predicting what this patient is at risk of. And we're going to see that this is quite a valuable operation. So patients come in, the goal of this is to identify undiagnosed conditions, things patients didn't know they had. And that's often the way. Medicine, as you all know, is treated in silos very often. If you're a cardiology patient, you go to see cardiologists, and you're not being assessed for cancer risk, or whatever it might be, other things. And so wouldn't it be great if when you came in to see one specialty, your data there was a safety net underneath, which was checking to see if you should be perhaps seeing other specialties as well. So that's the name of the game here. And I'll just quickly show you how it works very quickly. It's an interesting system. So please ignore the huge amount of text. I'm just going to use this to talk you through what's happening. So we receive a lot of information about the patient. So this is a textual description of someone who's sitting in front of you. And like I said, you're in a particular specialty, you're looking after the patient. But these data are then being used to assess for risk of all the other conditions, 480 conditions that this thing manages. So to start off, what it's going to do, it's run 480 risk tools, got it in the background. So the idea of this program is, imagine it's like a library. This machine can go to the library shelves and take a book off the shelf, and each book, which we call a tool, each tool is able to predict for a particular disease. So to start with, we're going to identify, we're going to run these things, we're going to find which is the top 10 most useful tools for the particular patient who's in front of us. So this particular patient might be at risk of cardiovascular disease, or might be at risk of some other things. And we're going to identify the top N, maybe the top 10. We are going to choose which of those tools we're going to run, and then the AI system itself, because we've taken this tool off the shelf, we've taken this predictor off the shelf, these are things that were already made, loads of predictors. And this AI then realizes that it has to assemble data to give to this predictor. Right? So it's going to, from the patient record, it's going to assemble all the inputs that it needs. It's then going to run the tool using those inputs and get some results. So we're going to find what the risk predictor thinks. So perhaps run a diabetes risk predictor and get some results. And then it starts to write the answers in a human readable form, and then perhaps one of the bits of secret sauce. There's an extra component in here called a reviewer. And the reviewer is taking all of the initial candidate outputs and it's reflecting on them, which is a machine learning term, which is to say it's going to try and identify which have got the most factual support. So it's got a whole bunch of things it can say to you, but some of them are supported by evidence and some are not. And that's what the reviewer is doing. And that's really a bit of the secret sauce, because if you are about to say something to your user and it hasn't got evidence to support it, you might be making it up. And that in large language model terms, that's a hallucination. You're saying something which is just barking mad and doesn't exist. So if you have a reviewer, it rules out loads of these hallucinations and helps the machine produce accurate results. And now you're experts at AI, you know what this plot is. This is a spider plot, and here are our risk predictions for loads of different conditions. I'll just read a few out. There's cancer, there's stroke, myocardial infarction, respiratory diseases, asthma, and so on. And around the outside is how well our machine is doing at predicting the correct risk for patients who it's never seen before for all these different diseases. And if you use OpenAI systems or other systems from general large language models, the performance you get is, you can't use it. You couldn't, if you were a medic, it would be irresponsible to rely on these machines because they hallucinate so much. You say, what is the cardiovascular risk of this patient? And it basically makes it up. Whereas what we're saying here is actually, through this process, through some of the things I've described to you, the risk predictions that are made by these machines are really, really accurate. And I think this is quite exciting, because how much money did it take, for example, to train ChatGPT? Nobody knows, but it was a big number. These things are very big and very expensive to train. Interestingly, DeepSeek, one of the things about it was that was very exciting about it, which caused the stock price of tech companies to tumble when it was released, is that it's really small in comparison and relatively, therefore, cheap to train. And that's the ethos behind these systems too. The data that we're using are often medical data which are not available to the public and to creators of large language models. But what we're saying is if you take an intelligent, medically guided approach to being able to exploit these medical data, and you work with clinical experts like Louise and the team, then you can produce systems that far outperform ChatGPT, Google Gemini, wherever it is. So we are literally boosting performance from 40% with ChatGPT, and this is true for the new one, 203, all the way up to 80%. So it's doubling the performance in being able to predict risk for these things. From obviously at Berkeley University, this is for a fraction of the price. Okay, thank you ever so much. I think what I'm going to do is just quickly show you the awesome people who did all this work and plenty more besides, of which is about 0.5%, and be delighted to take any questions that you have. Thank
you. It's very nice talk. There is, in this, I think beyond ChatGPT, like you're saying, there is this AI that is like more focused on medicine. Let's say one of those is open evidence, and always say in conclusion. So I think that's the reviewer. You know, they put all these things and they say in conclusion, like if you say, okay, how much did you? What I also wanted to ask was that, and it's always outperforming even the smartest amongst us, right? Like, so it's just like, so it becomes, will this not be an ethical issue in that the AI has so much more information, and then the reviewer gleans that information and gives you this, that, and they've, scouted the whole world's literature, so we're always going to be behind. In a sense, like if, like you said, from 40% going up to 80%. So does this not mean that ethically we should be doing this? Like use stuff like that, open-ended.
That's a fantastic question. Thank you, Dr. Buddha. It's an interesting one. I've got to say, I don't touch that with the barge pole. What I will, should we replace humans? Because obviously, like I say, the goal is not to do that. But I would say that AI systems fail. Clearly, they definitely fail. And they fail in ways that humans cannot empathize with. So, just take self-driving cars, the classic example. People run over people, loads. They do in London, they probably do in Kathmandu, I've seen the traffic. There's probably a lot of road traffic accidents, in fact. Self-driving cars are statistically better. They don't run over people quite so often. But I don't know if you remember the first time a self-driving car, Pittsburgh, somewhere like that in the US, it ran over somebody. It was dark. The person was using their phone. You kind of expect that, but I think if I was a human, it would be pretty hard for me to avoid that anyway. But the self-driving car ran over and killed that person, and it was a big scandal. Not because a human had killed them, that happens all the time, but just because a machine made them down. So perhaps there's a component of that empathy part there. Machines will go wrong, and they will go wrong in ways that humans find trivial or strange. In the same way that alien chess is happening when you ask it to play alien chess. It's very hard to understand its mode of behavior. So one of the important ways of getting around that problem, I think, is the explanatory part. You're absolutely right. Very often, regular models have an in-conclusion section. But what I really find helpful is that explanatory bit. So not just conclude what I've said, but to say why I've said it. So the drug recommendation system is an interesting one. So it'll say, I think we should be on these drugs with this dosage amount, be careful about this drug-drug interaction. And it will cite its sources, it will go back and say why. So the medic can then check it out, maybe learn something, I don't know. And again, there's a component there, human practice varies.
These new things list references. So obviously we humans, the clinician or whoever, has to make the final diagnosis and the way forward. But but this AI is scouring the whole literature, so it's like, isn't it incumbent on us to look at this, even so that we would never scour it? I mean, we could not do it humanly.
I like the idea that it might be ethical to at least listen to the safety net. I would say, as someone who helps build these things, I would say that a human has access to far more context. Yes, this device can see this particular wibble in your ECG that every cardiologist is not trained to look at might correspond to future atrial fibrillation. It's not something everyone's ever studied in medicine. So there's some value. But when the human is in front of the patient, you can see the patient's blue, they're choking, whatever it might be. There's a whole bunch of stuff that large language model can't do. So maybe it's that complementary part.
Hi, thank you for a nice talk. I was wondering about the ECG, the first one you talked about, which was based on the multimodal data you said, and if I understood it right, it's unlabeled data, right?
Well, a lot of it is unlabeled, and then it's a download. A lot of it is from Brazil, in fact, because they've got very good nationwide cardiology. So some of it is labeled, actually.
Okay, some of it is.
So therefore, it knows what atrial fibrillation.
Okay, but it's unsupervised learning. Okay. I was very curious about, you said you could talk to it and it would also give you an explanation for its answer.
Yes.
And I was wondering, that explanation that it comes up with, is that another output of the model, or is that the actual reasoning that the model also uses internally?
No.
Or is it not an output?
It's not reasoning, it's just an output. So we have not. So there are explicit reasoning models now. You'll see ChatGPT 01 and so on, and DeepSeek. They've got reasoning components built in, which is actually very old artificial intelligence. I was a student 20 years ago, and my first year project had exactly the reasoning model that's been put into these new systems. Bore you with great length about what's in it. But so that part, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, that part is not very exciting methodologically. But it is exciting as part of a model. It's the kind of things I'm talking about here are also like clever predictive texting. So yes, I've given you this output. The most likely evidence that generated that output are as follows. And so I could be hallucinating the answer as well as, I could be hallucinating the explanation as well as hallucinating the answer. But the probabilities are multiplied, they're smaller.
Okay, thank you, because I was thinking if you want to get clinicians on board, it's nice to have the explanation, but if the explanation is also an output that it's made in a kind of black box way, then it might be difficult to get people on board on that.
Yeah, see, and that's why these things are not 100%. In some of these tasks, they're 80%, some of them they're 90, 95%. It depends on how.
Thank you.
It was a very nice session. Thank you so much. Since we talked about the AI showing us the risk factors of diseases that can be seen in the people later, so since we talk about healthcare, physical health and mental health, so in terms of mental health, couldn't this actually increase the number of hypochondriacs? Because you are constantly showing the risk factors of the diseases. So how transparent are health experts going to be about this, and how is the AI going to handle the mental health aspect of this?
Oh, that's a great one. So I had this problem recently. My eldest son had a bit of a sniffle and a stomachache. He looked at those symptoms online and he said, "Oh, Daddy, have I got this really serious bowel cancer or something?" You probably haven't. So it's the understanding of risk. It's that sort of, the probability of disease given symptoms is not the same as probability of symptoms given disease. And it's really hard for humans to understand that way around. It's not the way that humans think. It's a great question. Would you release this to the general public? Not yet. No. That's what I say that with a laugh. But there are human-facing, I said human, they're all patient-facing versions of these where they wouldn't produce medicalized examples. But one of the things I really want to do with these came from actually, I have patients into my office every now and again, which is very strange. Some scientists do. It's a great privilege to have patients come to see scientists. It doesn't happen very often. I have some patients help us out with these projects, and some of them have very serious diseases. And one of them was saying, actually, I'm in hospital a lot, and when I'm there, in any 24 hours, 23 and a half of those hours, I just spend worrying. I don't know what's happening next. I don't know who's seen me. I don't know anything about what's been going on in hospital. So one of the things I really want to do is not just have one side of this for medics, but also have another side that, in some safe way, not to support hypochondria or produce legal challenges to the hospital or whatever it might be, just do the reverse. Help give some information to try and help reduce anxiety, because at the moment there's a void of people just getting stressed in hospital. I hope you'll excuse me. I'm terribly sorry, but my flight at the airport is going to be crazy. So I'll have to make that the last question.